Hello and welcome to this productivity masterclass. We're going to get started and we'll probably take 20 to 25 minutes to go through the content of this course. I'm going to urge you to pay as much attention as you can right now as we go through it, because this will leverage how much you get out of the session. Okay, so let's get going. And welcome again to the Power 3.0. I fondly named this course the Power 3.0 because I really believe that if you use this 30 minutes in the most effective way, you can start claiming freedom from the overwhelm in your life. So let's find out which one of these characters you are. I don't have enough time, not even to learn. I'm working really long hours and I can't commit to anything on a regular time schedule, so don't even commit me to this training. I work longer hours since the lockdown. My working hours are having some impact on my personal life. Now, if I had £100 for every time I've heard these statements from friends, from colleagues, from former colleagues, I'd be retired living on a lake in Switzerland somewhere. But instead, I decided to write a course that will help you with this sticky problem. So tune in. You can save multiple hours of your day just by investing these 30 minutes up front in the right activity, right? So we're going to go through the session. Hopefully this will take roughly 20 to 25 minutes, but if you hone in and focus, you're going to get as much out of it as you can. So by the end of it, you're going to know how to use these 30 minutes to reframe your daily challenges, find out why this works and when to apply it, and also an opportunity to develop your skills further with the additional resources linked to this course. The system works best if you do give us your attention, if you don't have your phone at the side of you, if you close down the other web pages that you have, if you shut the door, if you breathe, and finally, if you focus. So before we get into the details of the course, I want to start with a bit of an example. So you might be wondering what this image of me being pushed off a platform of a building has to do with productivity. And you would be right to wonder if you think that your productivity is a series of tasks that you need to complete. If you think instead that it is a system that leads to an outcome, then you may understand why I've chosen this example. So let me explain. This picture that you see right here was the most intense 10 seconds of my life. I felt absolutely everything. Every organ in my body as it floated over Auckland skyline. And I felt the fear of not landing well, the fear of not being able to stand up once I landed. But I didn't start the day planning to do this. I only wanted to go to the viewing gallery to look out over the city. Now, there are two things that made me take this jump. The first was the influence of design, and I'm going to talk more about this as we go through the course. And the second was a rapid shift in my mindset. All right, so if you hold on to design thinking and mindsets as we go through the rest of the content, I think you'll get a lot more out of it. So who am I? My name is Catherine. And I've been a chartered accountant for roughly 8 years of my professional life before I pivoted to do many, many different other things. So I also hold an MBA in innovation management from a French university, and I've studied numerous courses on strategy and behavioral science. I also have more than 15 years experience at a FTSE Top 10 company, and I am Trinidadian and British. Now, besides that, I have three main roles in my business. So I'm a course creator and a coach. I'm a consultant on business strategy, and I do every role in the C-suite except the CTO. Now, I won't lie to you. I work a lot in my jobs and roughly 6 days a week, an average of 70 hours a week. But I'm getting 3 jobs done. Now, very soon I will take on staff. But what I've learned about doing these jobs on my own is that I need to create some models for how I like to work in order to communicate that with my team, okay? So model isn't a procedure. It's a system for arriving at the right decision most of the time. So it's more than just a step-by-step guide. It's really how do you go about coming to that rich conclusion with the right mindset and influences on that decision-making process, okay? I will demonstrate how this works today. So Zero in on your concentration. We get going now. Let's first reframe your context of the day ahead, all right? We'll discuss some tools, concepts, and guides as we go through it as well, and then we will talk about how you can do consistent application of these ideas. So what's on your calendar tomorrow? I want you to pause for a moment and think about a meeting on your calendar or within the next week, if not just tomorrow, that lasts longer than 30 minutes. Don't necessarily check your calendar now, just give it some thought, okay? Let me have a quick drink while you do that. Okay, so what results do you want to have from that meeting? I know that remote work and COVID has created this new I need to see you urgency that creates even more noise in our days, okay? But I know as well that we could do better than just meet without a plan or a process. So going back to that meeting, how do you go about achieving a result for the meeting that you have in mind? And can you achieve that result in less time? So probably the first thing that you need to think about is, are your meetings that are longer than 30 minutes fully necessary? And what can make these meetings shorter? So let me give you a bit of the process to think this through. Who is the host of that meeting? First question. And who is the audience? How informed is that audience? And what typically happens in that type of meeting? So these are all the questions that you need to ask yourself as you start breaking down how you're going to approach that meeting the next time you attend it. Now, what can make that specific meeting shorter? So you can have a specified agenda, perhaps. You can have clear points for decisions. You can have pre-reads. You can have preparation ahead to answer any questions that attendees are likely to have. All right. So the idea is, how can you start building a mental model of how you will approach this meeting? All right. Now, I want to give you a few tips, because if this is not your meeting, you're going to have to do this in a very clever and intelligent way. So you need to plant the seed in how this meeting can be changed. You need to plant the seed not only with the host, but with the attendees as well. And planting the seed needs a bit of science and understanding how people click, how people think, and how people are likely to agree with what you have to say. So we'll talk more about that in the full course. Tip number 2 is to use the pyramid principle. So this is a very common principle in consulting work, which starts with answering the question that has been asked of that meeting, and then explaining how you arrived at that answer. The rule of 3 is also used in this principle, trying to focus on the most important three ideas or concepts that's going to get people over the line. All right. Now, you can also use a storyboard technique. And in the full course, I explain how the storyboard works at transforming different personalities in the room. Next, let's look at results. So what do you want to achieve? And what does the meeting owner want to achieve, right? Now, typically, you and everyone else has a result in mind, but they seldom share that up front. Maybe you think you know what other people are thinking, but you haven't really teased that out, especially if it's your own meeting. If a meeting is worth your time, it's going to be steering the attendees to take some sort of action or decision by the end of it. Now, what does the meeting owner want to achieve? What are the likely objections, to a course of action? And what are the points that support that course of action? What's your role in the meeting? So your role can be the specialist presenting that big idea and the person that everyone wants to hear from because they recognize you as that specialist. Or you could be supporter to the host idea, so an ally for a shared cause, for example. Or you can be an objection to the host idea, so the one who's challenging that course of action. Now, if you're clear on your role, you're more able to leverage it well when you attend the meeting. If your role is none of the 3 that I've mentioned, then you probably don't need to be there. And that's an interesting concept for people to get around, Can I say no to a meeting? Now, if you're in a leadership position and this seems like something important to you, you should really think about how this impacts on your team as well. Like, will you give your team the space to say no to meetings that they're not really useful being there? So a meeting serves a purpose. The idea is not necessarily to avoid meetings altogether, but it is to focus it and make the best use of that time. If you don't have a desired outcome to achieve from that meeting, don't turn up, okay? So I have a few tips, and you need to think also about your mindset for action as we go through this. Get clear on your role. Make sure that you know the desired outcome, or there's no point, and capture the results you want at the design stage, all right? Achieving your outcome. If this is your meeting, you achieve a result with great design, all right? If you are a supporter of the host idea, you achieve your result by influencing the design. If you are an objector to the host idea, you achieve your result also by influencing the design. So your job is not to design questions to reach the result that everyone wants. The result that the company needs should be your focus. Now, this is where you leverage your influence. Not every meeting is suited to pre-shaping, okay? There may be some meetings where you need to tease out different ideas and different possibilities. But even these meetings need some constraints. So you need to think about those constraints beforehand. Design matters, and it matters at the start, it matters throughout, and it matters at the end. In our course, we go much deeper into this concept. Your job is to design questions to reach an outcome that works best for you and the company. Your influence matters. Design matters. Concepts and guides. There are three main areas of concept and guide that I want to cover, which is intentional attention, assigning a new value to your time, and maintaining focus. Intentional attention is something that we're actually doing right now. So this is coming from the Pomodoro technique, a concept that's been long used in learning science over time. And this is about really focusing 25 minutes of your time on the objective that you want to achieve, and then relaxing that focus. And this works because your brain needs that. Your brain needs a kind of cyclical process with an ability to relax at the end. The second principle that I'd like to share and debate, if we could only speak to each other now, is around the value of your time. All right, so I'm going to tell you something that you may not initially have considered. You don't trade your time for money. If you work in a corporate context, you do not trade your time for money. Even if you're an entrepreneur, there is some element of trading your time for money, but if you think broader than that, you really trade your time for something else, to other currencies. When you start out your new contract, maybe you've agreed a package, and that package is what you get paid on an annual basis. It may incrementally increase, etc. However, once you've agreed the contract price for whatever you're going to do, you're then trading your time for two currencies, which is results and possibility. So what I mean by that, we've talked a lot about the results that we need to get whenever we're attending meetings or working with clients or any sort of activity that we do in our workday. It can even be the things that we do for ourselves. If you're spending time on something, you're not spending time on something else. That's pretty obvious. And it is the quality of that trade-off that you need to be considering when you're making decisions about what you're going to be doing. So let's dig further into possibility. If you were not spending more than your fair share of 40 hours a week in work, you could be doing many other things. You could be starting a side gig. You could be raising your authority and profile in your discipline outside of the company. You could be becoming a guest speaker, on a podcast or a news station or a radio station or with your favorite group of people online. You can be spending quality time with your family, and you could be changing your career with a new course of study, for example. You know what that magical possibility is for you. I can't tell you what that is, but start thinking about trading your time in a different way. This is about motivation, and we'll get more into this. So we talked about the 25-minute Pomodoro technique. Now I want to introduce to you what you do for the next 5 minutes of that 30 minutes. And I call this the Drive 5. Intense physical activity, you give your brain more energy, you give your body more energy, and you're able to contribute in a different way the next meeting that you have. I first discovered this relationship between those small breaks and my effectiveness when I was a smoker. I couldn't explain it. Every time I went out to have a cigarette between meetings, I can easily put down what I was working on before and transition to the next meeting in just a few puffs. So time blocking is the other area that I'd like you to think about. Most productivity specialists will advise on time blocking, and this can be done at a macro level. So when I say macro level, I mean you can have themes by day or even themes by month, okay? Then on a micro level, people may want to do more detailed planning. So maybe you want to break it into half days, or you want to break it into hours or 30 minutes. For me, that's a bit too much. But what I really like is using the day theme as well as a monthly theme around certain activity. So a monthly themed activity would be something like, this is the month that I want to develop my skills in a particular area. It may be public speaking because I'm doing a lot more of that lately. So I'm working on my skills there. And if I'm doing that, that's probably my area of focus when I'm reading, extra reading. So that's an idea of how you can time block in a macro way. And on a micro way, it is about that calendar that you manage in your office, but it's also about the sort of agreements you have with your family at home. So are you going to be sharing a moment at lunch, especially if you're still all working remotely? Are you going to be sharing lunch and dinners and meals? Or are you going to be sharing walks outside? It's really about how you agree on those non-negotiables in the day. All right. So the next is, how do you consistently apply? So you need a compelling reason to do this every day. And that compelling reason is your model. And if you have a model and you can reapply that model every time you attend a particular meeting or you perform a particular task, because this really isn't just about meetings, you can actually apply a model to any task that you're doing. Once you see the benefits of applying that model, you're going to want to do it more. And you're also going to want to improve it more. The next is mindset. So how can you get the most from that meeting or activity that you're doing with the mindset that you apply to it? So we get into this in a lot more detail. Then we talk about influence. How can you go about influencing the changes that you need to? Finally, it's motivation. How can you? So using these in step, each one slowly but surely adds to momentum when you're trying to create a change. Finally, there are enablers. Enablers could be external things to you. So let's talk about how time is managed in your office as a culture. This may not be necessarily you alone. Or it could be internal things. How much sleep are you getting? Are you eating the right types of food at the right times of the day? Are you getting sleep in the natural cycle that works for you? So there are many forms of enablers. So finally, I want to introduce my course. This is the Calm Amidst the Chaos. It is a productivity management system because it takes into consideration all of the points that I've told you in how you can make the 30 minutes work in the best possible way. In the full course, I will give you a few pointers and tips, including a guide that explains each of the 5 systems, videos that go into the models in a lot more detail, and a workbook with templates and examples that you can adapt to your needs. One of the examples that I have is the rainbow scripting method, which takes you from cold to hot, not hot to cold, in 30 minutes. And the idea behind this is a storyboarding technique. So we'll get into that when we take on the full course. So why did I jump that day? The lobby of the Sky Tower in Auckland is designed to provide you with assurance of how safe it would be to jump. So you walk into the building and you see people getting their safety gear on and how many times the equipment is checked. You also see on the TV screen that people are in the process of jumping. You see how happy they are when they land. And the minute you see that, or at least if you're me, you feel, oh, maybe it's not so unsafe. Maybe it's okay if I try to do this. So all of a sudden, I walked into that lobby, and even though I'd never thought I could possibly be jumping, I suddenly thought, why wouldn't I jump? So they have designed a process that addresses all of my fears without me even having to ask them. The other part of this change was that I had to shift my mindset. And my typical mindset would be, I can't jump. I will hurt myself for sure. And my mindset shifted to, I'm never going to be in Auckland any time in the future. So why not? Why not just take the jump? So by the end of the process, I was checked at least 5 times and I was scared out of my mind, but I hyper-focused on that young lady on the left who coached me through the entire process until I jumped. It was still a leap of faith, but I did it knowing that I would be safe, and that was the biggest issue for me. So you can work with us by following our website, deeple.com, looking for us on Facebook, where ideas launch, or Instagram at Consult Deeple. Thanks very much, and I look forward to seeing you on the course.